Live.
All right, welcome back here to another week of chaos, insanity, interesting things, giant snowstorms, and another big controversy. Although we did talk about it a little bit last week, Governor Cuomo of New York maybe might have sent people to nursing homes who had COVID, and they weren't even of the eligible age. We don't even know how bad that is. Although there's a lot of information spilling out, we're going to be getting into that today. We got some different information about Tim Boyd, the mayor of Colorado City in Texas, who recently resigned from some things that he said, but did he tell it how it was? Pretty sure he did. I think we're going to get into that as well. And also, one last thing here before we get started. Should teachers get vaccinated? A big thing going on right now between the press and the Biden administration, who can't seem to give any straight answers. We'll have to talk that one about next week. But I know there's some discussions by Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, who believes that more money will be needed because the current stimulus just isn't big enough, from her words. What do you think about that, Chad?
Uh, I I don't want to see more spending on anything. As far as I know, they have $1 trillion just sitting unspent in discretionary spending.
Mm.
So they have $1 trillion from last year. Last year they took in $3 trillion in tax revenue and printed $12 trillion. Or spent $12 trillion out of their magic, Fed system. Um,
The magic box of money.
Yeah, the magic, the supposed gold reserve, which is what the Federal Reserve was supposed to be, um, long since detached from that. So I guess borrowing against future promise of U.S. success, or
Yes.
faith in the future promise of U.S. success, which is absurd. Um,
Uh,
so yeah, apparently we're not spending enough. That's just vomited easy.
yeah. Yeah, we're going to get into at least all of these things today briefly. I think we'll keep the teachers things possibly for next week. Regardless, unfortunately, there's just two of us here today. I'm the department chair,
I am the cabinet. The gavel
and
is unable to join us today, but
unfortunately,
should
but
return next week.
indeed, we need someone has to keep us in line. Otherwise, we'll just
Oh yeah, yeah.
go.
Now we can get away with saying all the things with
Haha.
uncontested.
And there's nothing you can do about it, gavel, except gavel us into submission next week. So, all right. So, which one did you want to get into first? I think. I
I want
mean,
to start with Tim Boyd because it should be relatively short, and then we can get into the main course, which is Cuomo.
all
Uh,
right. Please do. Yes.
all right, so I'll share this with you.
Mhm.
Uh, there we go.
So I was going to say, while Cabinet is getting the article up, there was a massive, a big snowstorm went through the southern part of the country, wiped through the southern states, particularly Texas, and beat them up. I mean, everything froze, and I'm not going to
Right.
make fun of Texas
Near
because
as I
we're
can
all
tell, it was a 100-year event.
there. Some people were saying it was. Some people were just saying it was a decent amount of snow and ice for what the Northeast would understand, but poor Texans were not
Right,
used
that's
to
a
it.
100-year event for Texas.
There you go.
It
Yeah.
hasn't been that cold in Texas in 100 years. I believe that's true, or if it's not true, it's really close to being true.
Right.
Um, in any case, certainly it hasn't happened twice in 100 years.
Right.
Um, a Texas mayor resigned after seemingly telling residents to fend for themselves in a Facebook post amid a deadly record-breaking winter storm that left much of the state without power Tuesday. As then mayor of Colorado City, Tim Boyd wrote an insensitive message for people desperate for heat, water, and power, saying only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. Um, no one owes you, and it does appear he misspelled parish. I don't think
Mm.
he lacks the spelling ability. I think it's more likely he was using voice to text, which why
Hmm.
you would voice to text into social media is horrifying to me. I would never do that. But again, I wouldn't use social media. No one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local. Okay, these are all direct quotes from the tweet, which we're going to read anyway.
Right.
Um,
I don't know if I want to take the context of what the media is going to say. We can look at
yeah, in
the
fact,
direct
we can
context.
just go straight to the tweet. The point is, he resigned. His wife was fired from her job. So punished
Well,
for his actions.
that's BS.
Way to
Excuse me, but
support
that's
women in the
horrible.
workplace.
Right.
It's terrible. Let's look at his tweet and see how bad it was.
That is
Um,
insane.
so here's this guy, governor of a small Texas town. or mayor of a small
Mayor.
Texas town. Um, Let me hurt some feelings while I have a minute. Now, this to me makes me happy. Yes, yes, we should be hurting some feelings on occasion because we have more important things to do than consider everybody's feelings at all times under all circumstances. Of course, makes him seem insensitive.
Right.
No one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during times like this. Sink or swim, it's your choice. The city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owes you nothing. And this is technically true, by the way.
Hmm.
People say, well, like, oh, I pay taxes to the city and it owes me things. Well, yes, but who do you buy your power from, Chair?
It's a private company.
It's a private company. All right, good.
Hmm.
So the city regulates that private company to some extent. Obviously, nobody foresees 100-year storm events.
Hmm.
They happen. People have insurance, whatever, or they don't.
Hmm.
The city is not obligated to make the private company do things. You signed a contract with the private company, right?
Right.
Okay, so the private company owes you exactly what is in that contract and nothing more. Nothing more.
Correct.
I bet in that contract it says they don't have to provide power under exigent circumstances.
Can't say I know exactly offhand, but it's their job to provide me with power if I'm paying them for a service.
Correct, but I bet there's a cover their butts clause in there where it says,
Yeah.
okay, so act of God comes through.
If the space shuttle were to come down and hit the power lines, that's yeah,
Right,
they gotta
okay.
fix that.
So technically, the power company owes you nothing. Of course, they're trying to get the power back up.
Hmm.
But this line here was much ballyhooed. They're like, oh no, people pay taxes, people pay the power company, they are owed. And it's like, no, you made a contractual agreement.
Hmm.
You're bound by the terms of the contract as they are, and you had a choice whether or not to buy power. You can not buy power. That's allowed.
Right.
Um, Power a um, is something that you get, but it's not something that it's not like life, liberty, or property, right? Those are things the government owes you.
Right.
Um, if you don't have uh, if you don't have electricity, you step up and come up with a game plan to keep your family warm and safe. If you have no water, or you deal without and think outside the box to survive and supply water to your family. Presumably, if there's enormous amounts of ice, that could be an
Hmm.
excellent source of water. But
Hmm.
um, if you are sitting at home in the cold because you have no power and are sitting there waiting for someone else to come rescue you because you're lazy, it's a direct result of how you were raised. Basically, so he's throwing shade on people's parents who are lazy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Gotta.
it's not a nice thing to say.
No, it's
It's
not.
not a tempered thing to say. No politician should say something like this, but um, I would expect my uncle to say it to me.
Hmm.
I would expect, you know what I mean? Like I would expect my boss to say things like this, and they wouldn't be wrong to say it. It's wrong in the political form. Social media is the devil, but all right, I'll continue. Only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. Obviously, he sounds extremely Nietzschean there. I
Hmm.
think that's too far. Um, Folks, God has given us the tools to support ourselves in times like this. Okay, so he sounds a little religious. He's in Texas. But anybody would say, Aristotle would say, we have the capacity for reason.
Hmm.
Um, this is sadly a product of a socialist government where they feed people to believe that the few will work and others will become dependent for handouts. I'm sorry that you have been dealing without electricity and water, yes, but I'll be damned if I'm going to provide for anyone that is capable of doing it themselves. We've lost sight of those in need and those that take advantage of the system and mesh them into one group. Bottom line, quit crying and looking for a handout. Get off your ass and take care of your own family. Don't be a part of the problem. Be a part of the solution. It's actually a bit of a positive message there.
It is, but and this is the problem is that you are in government.
Yeah, and I'm reading it as somebody who hates FDR's policies, right? Like I don't
Right.
think you should have a roof over every head and a chicken in every pot. I think that would be great to have, but it is not government's responsibility to provide.
See, and this is the thing, though, is that now that mentality, the one you are describing, is the originality of what government was supposed to be, but
Right. So this
no,
guy reads like an old school Texan to me.
right.
Right.
But the
He
problem
seems to me
is,
like if this guy's no longer acceptable in Texas, then where did all the Texans go?
oh, they're slowly being, well, the state's slowly being turned purple. Just think of it that way. If
Yeah.
that state is being slowly turned purple, look what's going to come next.
It'll
And
look
the
like
problem,
Pennsylvania soon.
right? And the problem is that people are now becoming more expectant that the government, the state, is going to do things for you. It's their job. It's less my responsibility, more the job of the state to do these things for me. Look at how many of these extremely young voters are looking, at least those who look very much more liberal, are expectant that the government will do these things for them.
Yeah. Pay for college. Give me a check for this or that. Give me a check because COVID. Whatever.
And
So,
that certainly has to be a product of what this guy, at least to some degree, is saying, which is your parents did not raise you the way they need to be raised, of having self-responsibility to do these things. Now, don't get me wrong. I would have said the message a little bit differently. Again, he could have said
well,
all
some would
this.
say it's exclusively the parents' role in society to counteract all these other forces. But when the weight of everything else is the tide is going the other way, I wonder how much parents can even do.
Depends on how good of parents they were.
Yeah.
And not to not to toot my own horn and say I am perfect, by no means am I not, but I was very fortunate to have parents that drilled self responsibility into me. And then, of course, like a kid, I made my own mistakes and I learned the hard way, but then I valued what they taught me more. And it's tough because not every parent is like that.
Right.
So with him, with this mayor, if he would have just said it a little differently and basically just
Right.
said,
Well,
listen,
that's what kills me, right? Because I think he has to resign now. You can't say something like that in public and resign. It kills me
right,
that he snapped like that, but I wonder what sort of pressures brought this guy to snap because it seems like this is the sort of person you would prefer to have as your neighbor in a crisis. He seems like the sort of person if he walks his talk, who would get out and try and help. And I bet he does. I bet that's why he was so angry when seeing so much complaint and whining effectively coming through social media. Again, social media is the devil.
yes.
And I am obligated to represent the gavel's point of view because I said, look, I'm sad. He's right, and now there's one less adult in the room. Makes me sad. And the gavel said, perhaps rightly, I thought it was very insensitive and childish. Many of our politicians lack empathy. How can you tell an entire city to fend for themselves? So sad.
See, and this is where you have what's considered, again, this is a once in 100-year event for Texas. These people are not prepared for it. These people are going to expect that the government will help, but I think you already mentioned once, but you mentioned before we actually began the video today, that again, like, just imagine what this guy must have heard, or people were yelling at him like, you must get this for me, and just drove him over the edge.
Yeah. And
Again,
so now, like the guy you get to replace him, I'm not sure he's going to be better.
no, no,
But
he
this is the
might not
difference
be.
between like we demand that our politicians appear to be good, and this is going to lead into the Cuomo thing nicely, I think.
Yeah, I think it definitely will. I mean, we're already on point talking about Governor Cuomo. So, are we at the point now where we have this expectation of our politicians that they have to, obviously, they have to look a certain way, they have to be perfect, they have to be immaculate, but at the same time, that's impossible. We can't seem to come to grips with that, or at least some people can't. I know I can. I know that if I'm going to have a politician who I'm going to vote for, I know they're not going to be perfect, but they're going to have their nicks and their scratches and their dents.
Yeah, I mean it's like you're going to have to make a choice. You can have someone who appears ideal,
Right.
or you can have someone who does the right thing most of the time and appears messy. And
Right.
it seems like we've been trained to prefer the appearance of the ideal over any any substance. Um, and I actually had a disagreement with a colleague recently. As I think over the summer we had a disagreement, and it came down to him saying, "Well, why can't we just have Camelot again?" And I said, "Camelot's dead. And if you think that it was ever real, that's the problem."
There never. I mean, there never was a Camelot. Now, for those of the listeners who don't understand what we're describing, and tell me if I'm wrong, but Camelot was sort of the embodiment of the Kennedy administration.
Yeah, it was this idea of this sort of beautiful pageant of this, great looking young guy who served in World War II, who, said everything in an inspirational way and had the perfect hairdo, and wouldn't you like to be his wife? And it was just like, it's just
The
Hollywood celebrity worship, as near as I can tell.
Right. And that is, but here's the thing, that is what Kennedy was. He was a celebrity politician. He was the image of a celebrity politician. And this is the problem, is that Kennedy was not perfect either. I mean, how many skeletons were in Kennedy's closet? Do we even want to open up that closet and consider that?
I mean, let's talk about his father for one.
Right. I mean, how many things do you want to get into? Was he
Supporter of
cheating on his wife?
Nazism, mafia ties.
Right. Now,
You know,
mind you, I'm not gonna go after the son for the sins of the father or vice versa, but we don't know. Camelot never existed. It never did. And that's a problem. People hold on to that because they want to believe it's true. But then you have someone like Trump, who's the opposite, right? Like he's just going to tell you how it is. But
right. I mean, and it's like you don't even bother putting lipstick on that pig. You just admit it's a pig,
right,
and then you move forward with like, okay, but what can I get out of the pig?
right. I mean, there was I can't remember the exact quote, but Trump basically said, "Yeah, like I'm." He didn't say I'm a jerk. He said something a little harsher, but he's like, I'm a jerk, but I'm a jerk who works for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm a jerk who works for
and
you
a lot
against
of
all.
people clearly were motivated by that to vote for him in both elections. Um,
Right,
and they had come to grips with the idea that the world was not going to be a perfect place, right?
right.
And that tends to be more of a conservative mindset anyway. So that is to say, I'm not sure that you could have a candidate on the left do the same thing and be as appealing.
Yeah. All right.
And that
So,
candidate might be Bernie.
uh,
From some points of view, Bernie tells the truth. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. Um, Now, I disagree with some of the framing on that, but that might be why the left never gets a Bernie, or never
oh,
gets like what they perceive as their ideal um, in terms of policy,
yeah,
because they're gonna they're gonna prefer style over substance in aggregate.
right. Well, they're already burning Bernie already. Still, they're going after him again,
Yeah,
saying he's not. Some people are saying he's not left enough. So it never gets old.
yeah,
Um,
and that's a problem both parties have. So anyway, into the Cuomo
yeah.
situation.
All right. So we had talked about this a little bit last week, and I had a real difficulty picking an article because the sheer amount of news coming out. And again, if you've been living under a rock, Governor Cuomo is having a lot of people start putting a microscope on him because at this point, someone in his administration came forward and essentially said, "Oh, by the way, the numbers of people who passed away due to COVID from nursing homes, the number we have is not correct. It's actually much more." And right now they're saying 15,000 plus people died well, not in nursing homes, but from Cuomo's strategy of in the early phases of COVID, putting
Keeping
people.
COVID out of the hospitals, right? Like
Right.
so
Well,
so so arguably, that was his rationale.
right. Putting them in nursing homes, and they weren't even of the correct age in some cases. So the number, and this is where it's really like icky. Their report was 8,500 dead, but what they were doing is they were not reporting the thousands and thousands and thousands of more who were being transported from nursing homes to hospitals. So when that person contracted COVID, was, sent to the ER and died in the hospital, they're like, oh, that's a hospital death. That's not a death that started, or that process did not start in the nursing home.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you could argue that technically it is a death in the hospital, but in the same instance, this is direct connection to his policy of putting people in nursing homes.
It's clear that there was manipulation of the counting of deaths for various purposes on many
Right,
fronts.
right. So, anyway, the article I chose, it's not technically a news article. This is an opinion article by Jeffrey McCall, who works for The Hill. He also writes for a few other groups, and he takes an interesting perspective that I think a lot of people have forgotten with how the media and how politicians are now inherently connected at the hip, and they shouldn't be. So here, I'm going to
Well,
start reading.
this is what I was saying. This is Camelot.
Right. So, Sputnik International is the state run news agency of the Russian government. One of its key functions is to make Russia's strongman, Vladimir Putin, look good. The American Free Press, however, protected by the First Amendment, was designed for journalists to independently challenge political leaders and hold them accountable. America's media should not be in the business of promoting any government official. I love that. It should be sufficient to report relevant and newsworthy facts as clearly as possible and let the citizenry make its own judgment about the performance of public
All
servants.
right, hold on a moment. So Sputnik is like like a modern day version of Pravda?
Uh, Something in that realm, yes.
Okay. Just as my old Cold War brain is trying to catch up.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, just a rebranding. That's all it is. That vision of journalism was largely missed during the exuberant coverage of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo during the pandemic. Uh, and again, how many times was this man brought up before the media in hundreds of articles saying, "Oh, he is the shining example we need to combat Trump. He is the person that should run."
Right.
And be
This is real leadership. This is the leadership we need in the COVID era.
right,
Here is the template for doing it right.
right, and again, the author is saying, "Why did you not pay attention to this the entire time?" And again, if you're living in Iraq and you don't know exactly what's going on, this is all Trump bashing. This is leadership, just like you said, to go against Donald
No,
Trump and
it's
believe.
not even just like yes, it was a political season,
Yes.
and so it was. It served Trump bashing, but it was also like just bashing red governors, red states, right?
Hmm.
So there was a lot made of how great Cuomo and Gavin Newsom were and how bad DeSantis was.
Right. Well, that's part of the election machine,
Right.
the machinery of the whole system.
So it's not limited to one individual. Like it's not like although he may imagine it at times, they had a crosshair directly on Trump for being Donald Trump. It was a crosshair on Trump for being a conservative
Or just a
or being a
crosshair on
representation
conservatism.
of the Republican Party. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a crosshair on conservatism. Yeah, definitely right on that. Media credibility is now taking a hit in the wake of revelations that Cuomo administration or the Cuomo administration distorted and withheld data about nursing home deaths in New York. Wolf, you're next. That's what happens when members of the press curl up comfortably as lapdogs instead of being aggressive watchdogs. That Cuomo is finally now getting some scrutiny hardly excuses months of cuddly coverage. Um, yeah, definitely go after this guy. He did something wrong. He needs to be held accountable, but he won't. And that's a huge problem that I have. But let me ask you something, because there's another huge problem here that I want to bring up. Um, so there used to be this barrier between politicians and the media that kept them away from each other. And directly, this is what the author is also saying with this article: is that now they're buddy buddy. They're connected at
Right.
the hip,
I think
and
that barrier's been
gone forever.
yeah for quite some time.
It's been gone for quite some time and it's never coming back. Is that the fear that we have?
Um, yeah, I don't see how you could maintain it. That barrier was an illusion.
Yeah.
It was maintained by cultural expectations, which are gone.
Hmm. Hmm. And I mean, I guess we could argue it was never, to some degree, it was already had holes being poked in it in the 1700s. I mean, how many how
Yeah,
many of
I mean, look, Ben Franklin had a printing press.
I don't need to say anything else. I
Okay.
guess you're right. And there you go. I mean, we even fall to the susceptibility of the desired idea that things would hopefully work for the better. But there's one other thing I want to bring up that I think is going to make this process even worse, and that is the millennial and Gen Z populations, of which I am a millennial myself. The media powerhouses, the newspapers, the TV shows, they're dying. No one watches TV news anymore if you are a
Right.
millennial, or like it's laughable. It's a
And
joke.
and they had acquired for themselves a position of seeming importance that I think was unhealthy. That is to say, I think the blur between entertainment and information, or between propaganda and actual news, that blur was always there. Like it was never a clean, defined line. What happened in the 20th century is some of these outlets succeeded in presenting themselves as objective
Hmm.
and convincing in people's minds the idea that they could be objective. I think that was really the illusion.
And news is not news anymore. It's now a talk show. It's not, here's what happened, and nothing is said after
Right, but
that.
what I'm saying is it never was. Like even when it was here's what happened, they were picking and choosing which facts to present.
Right, but it was much more so. At least it was to some degree a little bit more newsworthy than what it is now.
I think it had more of an appearance of newsworthiness, and
It
it
was
was always wretched.
so now it's just they're
Now it's
throwing it in our
revealed for what it
face.
is. Yeah.
Right, and I think to some degree, I think they're getting away with it, and they're doing it because they realize the end is near. Because the younger generations are not going to watch them anyway, and they just don't care.
Yep.
I mean, they're going to take the news
So
stories.
they've peeled back the veneer, they've taken
Yeah,
off the mask, and now
yeah,
they're what they are. But they were always
yeah,
that.
yeah. Disgusting. All right, moving on. Lack of press accountability for public officials has its consequences. Free reigning politicians get puffed up by flattering press accounts. They get drunk with ego and power, and are encouraged to engage in even more audacious acts of authority. Too many in the press played cheerleader for Cuomo throughout the COVID pandemic. His
Including his brother, by the way, who
oh,
interviewed him on the regular.
which he goes into this here.
Okay.
His carefully staged daily televised press conference dramas were scripted by Cuomo's handlers for maximum effect. Too many in the media played along with wall-to-wall coverage and softball questions. Did it never occur to many of these reporters that the pressers were grand public relations events designed, in part, to turn cooperative reporters into influencers working on behalf of a political initiative?
No, I'm sure they were fully well aware of that.
Right. And that is the most disgusting. I cannot stress this enough. Now, mind you, this guy,
So you're imagining this like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed journalism student, like setting out in the world of media and expecting to get to the bottom of things and tell people the truth? Like that person
no,
exists?
no, I think that person does exist, but I think that there are different. Some of them are that. Some of them are coming in saying, I am going to change the world for the best,
Yeah.
and what I know is best.
I hear from clients all the time
Mm-hmm.
that that they perceive activism as
Yeah,
a positive career path.
there you go.
They
There you go.
they sort of ennoble it, or the media ennobles it incestuously,
Right,
and they sort of fantasize about it. They see it as something worth pursuing.
right. And that is a very scary, scary thing. I mean, it's been around forever, but it is just more and more and more so the norm, and that really scares me. And saddens me too, to no end, being in the middle that I typically am when it comes to political ideology. Being able to see the wrong in both sides. I can't. It sours me. Regardless, that last paragraph. I mean, this guy
Yep.
has lost his job. This guy, no one's going to touch this guy with a 10-foot pole. Him saying this. There's some people there who are like, oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's the opinion section. Is it just
Right.
like is it a random Like is it like the Wall Street Journal or New York Times where anybody can write an opinion piece and submit it?
Oh no, this is not some random guy. This is, I
Okay,
mean,
so
he's a
he's on the
writer.
staff.
Yeah, he's on the staff, but he's
Oh yeah, not for long probably.
not for long, or you're not climbing any ladders, pal. That's probably he's stuck there forever.
Yeah.
Sociopolitical observer G.K. Chesterton commented a century ago, quote, precisely because political speeches are meant to be reported, they are not worth reporting. Chesterton's whimsical observation should have been considered by the news outlets hyping Cuomo's public proclamations for months on end.
Yep.
The predominant media narrative
And
was.
right around the same time, by the way, they were
Oh,
Trump was getting away with the same thing, briefly.
mhm,
Now it was a much more antagonistic environment,
yes,
but they were showing up with a camera every single day while he held a press conference. Now they stopped doing that for Trump. They did not stop doing that for Cuomo.
probably because they realized it was working.
Right,
It
in
was
both
working
cases.
for Trump. Right. So they're like, oh, we'll just shut this down and keep going the other way. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened too. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember listening to news reports and reading up where people are like, "Oh man, his numbers of people liking what Trump's doing are going up."
Yeah, I mean, he was running a reality TV show, and being Trump, he was good at it.
Right, and that's the problem. They saw that, and they decided finally to turn off the spigot. So,
Yep.
moving on. The predominant media narrative was that Cuomo was the leader the nation needed. You said that quite line for line. Incredible how true that is. During the crisis, he was the empathetic leader worrying about everybody's grandmother, a stark contrast to the uncaring Trump, who the accepted narrative reported was callously letting people die. Cuomo bubble wrapped himself in, quote, science, rationalizing any decision he made by saying he was following the science. He was lauded as honest, direct, and brave, and conveying incredible strength.
Yep.
CNN broke long established conflict of interest standards for journalism by allowing the governor's brother, Chris Cuomo, to do frequent on air interviews with the governor. Those interviews provided more melodrama, family banter, and comedic.
I mean, yeah, it actually got sad at one point where they were both like arguing about which one of them their mother liked best, and it was like, and it was,
Yeah, yeah, who
um,
made better like sauce and
it was
stuff
like
for
pathetic
pasta.
squabbling. But you thought that initially, like, oh, maybe they just like set this up as a gag. No, they seemed to actually be squabbling with each other on air. It was really strange.
I see when they did that, and I watched it, and I mean, I knew I'm like, this is ridiculous, but I knew, or at least in my opinion, what I think they were doing. They're like, oh, let's humanize these individuals. Let's humanize the Cuomo's
Maybe that was the
our
intent, but
voter
they
base.
went too far
Right.
with some of it. Like it got
Well,
personal.
right. Oh God, it's so bad. Um, Governor Cuomo received an International Emmy Founders Award for
This is
his
the best
daily
part.
briefing.
We'll come back to this, Emmy. This is the best part.
Oh, Emmy Academy President Bruce Paisner said in a statement that Cuomo, quote, effectively created television shows with characters and plot lines and stories of success and failure.
Yeah.
Sounds more like praise for a primetime drama.
For which one could be awarded an Emmy. There are people who want his Emmy taken away. I don't think so. He earned it.
Oh, just let him keep it and
Let
let
him
me
keep
a
it.
badge of shame.
Yes.
Oh,
What is acting if not
blood.
lying?
Wow. I mean, blood-stained Emmy. I mean, it is the exact. My God, you're so right. That's ridiculous. Oh,
People act like these are like award, like it's a Nobel Peace Prize or something. Although the quality of those have gone down in recent years.
yeah.
But it's
Let him keep
not.
it.
It's not. It's not like this is. Yeah. All right. I'll let you continue the article.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Oh God. Ugh. Cuomo was even published a book about COVID leadership lessons, released late last October while the pandemic still was running its deadly course. Looking back now, that book comes off as an NFL quarterback popping celebratory champagne corks at halftime of a mid-season game in which his team is losing. Turns out that Cuomo was wrong on several fronts, including the number of hospital beds and ventilators his state needed. He was wrong on the decision to send COVID-infected patients back into nursing homes. The recent revelations about nursing home deaths shows he was even more wrong than previously known. He overstepped his authority in restricting church attendance and lost in the Supreme Court of the United States. History at some point will weigh in on decisions regarding shutting down businesses and schools. Oh, and let's also bring up the
Oh,
fact that he didn't use the hospital ships. He didn't use the apparently I found out that there was a National Guard set up. They had like hospital checkpoints. They're not even checkpoints. They had outdoor hospitals set up for COVID. He refused to use them. Like they were set up
yep.
apparently.
Because that would have been admitting a W for the Trump administration
Right,
on any
right.
front. Yep.
Um, oh, and this is one of the other articles I was torn about bringing in to this discussion. Was that he also, like, after all of this stuff broke, he went after some of the people in his own party. Apparently, went after a representative in Queens named Ron Kim.
Well, he and De Blasio did a good bit of squabbling as well. I mean, if anybody's worse than Cuomo, it might be De Blasio.
Well, De Blasio in the same article was quoted in saying, "Oh, essentially that Cuomo uses these bully-like tactics all the time. This is typical Cuomo." I
Okay,
mean,
okay, De Blasio. Let me
what's
shed
new,
some
right?
crocodile tears for you.
Right. But apparently he told this representative, this Democratic representative Ron Kim, that he was going to destroy him and destroy his career if he didn't go along with what was going on and support Cuomo.
Hmm.
Um, like, and this is not the first time like he's done this. He's done this with other politicians in the party.
Yep.
The party's to some degree publicly turning away from him, but it seems like it's stopping, and he's just going to retain. He's just going to retain his position. He's going to stay governor. Um,
Yeah, we can have a we'll have a vote on that in a little bit.
yeah, oh god. Ugh. Ultimately, Governor Cuomo all along was just doing what politicians do, seeking rhetorical opportunity for self-promotion and spin. The American public expects and generally understands that. What the public doesn't understand is an independent press getting snookered by political machinery and running interference for government officials whom the press should instead be holding accountable. Rather than serving as surrogates for the public, as they should, agenda driven members of the press corps try to create a COVID hero and sell him to the nation. That sale now qualifies for the lemon laws. A subservient press never serves the interests of the public, as has been proven for decades in nations of state run news operations.
Yep.
Absolutely. Oh, by the way, this guy, Jeffrey McCall,
Radio
is
news director,
media,
professor of
a
communication.
yep, DePaul University. Just it's disgusting. I mean, again, like this is something that you and I have seen forever, that we have realized forever. How many people are out there that don't realize this?
What'll be interesting is how many people a year from now remember that this happened.
And that's the other half of the game. You know,
I
and
mean,
speaking,
if this was reported when it was happening, that would have been different, right? But it's not. It's not being reported when it was happening. It's being reported literally a year later.
right, and it's going away already.
Yep.
It's already starting to melt away, and it more than likely will. So let's let's move on to, I guess, making our predictions,
Yep.
because I mean it's we already know what's going to happen. Or at least I already know what my vote's going to be. Let's see what yours is going to be.
All right. So, um, the question is, will Cuomo suffer any real censure over this?
Oh,
Like, will anything change in terms of his opportunities, his prospects, his ability to remain governor of New York, his ability
well,
to, I don't know, run for president? That's probably
he's
not
going
going to
to
happen anyway.
yeah. Well, here's the thing. He's going to remain governor.
Right.
Sadly, he's going
Okay.
to remain governor.
So will he
Um,
remain governor of New York? I guess is the
well, no, I actually like what you had. I like what you had there. And the reason being is he'll remain governor. He'll just take a back seat. Um, but when it comes to, like you just said, possibly running for president or being seen as the poster boy for how to run your government, he's gone.
okay.
He no longer is going to be seen as that person.
So so he's kicked out of Camelot, but no actual like meaningful censure in terms of his own like running his state or whatever.
Yeah,
Like he can continue to do that.
he was driving the car. Now he's sitting in the back.
Got it.
So
So
I don't know.
your answer is
Uh,
prospects are limited.
yeah, limited prospects retain governorship. And speaking of other governors, I have to bring forward. I don't know if you still have the link I sent you earlier before we started. Governor Ralph Northam. Is it Ralph Northam?
Yep.
Yeah. Has anyone remembered what happened to him? Does anyone
So
even
he's
know?
still governor of Virginia, right?
Yeah.
So this is evidence of your argument.
Right, Ralph Northam. Did everyone remember the whole
I'm gonna say
blackface
I'm gonna
KKK?
say forced to resign. I'm hoping. You know, if some small mayor in Texas is forced to resign over one, you know, one slightly insensitive tweet, um, generally insensitive towards lazy people who don't need anything, actually, right? Because if you got into the nitty gritty of the tweet, he wasn't being insensitive towards people who actually needed help.
Mm-hmm.
He was being insensitive towards people who were perfectly able-bodied and able-minded and couldn't like be bothered to walk a few feet to like acquire water or something.
Yeah.
Um, but so if that guy can be forced to resign, I think Cuomo should be forced to resign. So I'm going to vote forced to resign, but I acknowledge you're probably right.
Yeah, I want him to resign, but the other thing that I unfairly works to my advantage is the fact that I believe there actually there's a race right now for the oh no, that's not the governor of New York. I'm sorry, the mayor of New York City. My
Oh, okay.
apologies.
So De Blasio is currently in a mayoral race.
Against Andrew Yang.
Oh, good for Yang. I think De Blasio's earlier spat with Cuomo will now work in his favor, even though it
Free.
wasn't over this.
No, he's
Well, De Blasio had a spat with Cuomo over whether or not to close the schools or keep them open. Cuomo wanted them open. De Blasio wanted them closed. I think that was the
uh,
deal.
if you're De Blasio, I don't know how you win, considering where New York is, the city at this point. It's such.
Well, because you're De Blasio, so you've got a D. Oh no, wait. He's being primaried by Yang, right? Or
No.
Yang's running as a Republican.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just rate. Yeah, rate mayor. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's see here. Dig, dig, dig. Oh my God, there's 5 gajillion people running for mayor. I mean, not surprising.
Running for mayor of New York City. He'll be running as a Democrat. Yeah, he's primarying De Blasio,
Yeah,
which actually gives him a chance, a snowball's chance. There's no chance. There's no chance a Republican wins in New York City.
no, it's there's so many. There's so many people running. I'm trying to count them
Yeah,
all.
it's
There's
a
too
clown
many.
car situation.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
This
11,
is
12,
not a
13,
smart move
14,
for
15, 16,
Yang.
17, 18, 19,
Do
20,
you
21.
want to be in charge of New York City? Do you
I,
really? At this
I
stage?
mean, yeah, but even with all the mud that would cover him, just instantly becoming the mayor of New York City,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? You're going to sit and just still sit on CNN and just every once in a while be in political commentary.
Yeah, I don't know. That's weird. Um, we should be up to our quote for the week, but I don't have it prepared. So perhaps we put the quote off. No, we don't put the quote off. We get the quote.
Oh yeah, this is. I'm very curious to see what the. I was just going to say the mallet, but not a mallet.
The gavel.
The gavel will say
Yeah.
when she comes back. When she listens to what we had to say today. Uh,
By the way, all this ancient stuff is conveniently out of
some
copyright, so you can get it on Project Gutenberg if you have an interest in such things.
yay.
All right. Um, we did number 10 last time.
Hmm.
So, number 11. Never say of anything, I have lost it, but I have restored it. Has your child died? It is restored. Your wife? She is restored. Your estate taken? It is likewise restored. But it was a bad man who took it. What is it to you by whose hands he who gave it has demanded it again? While he permits you to possess it, hold it as something not your own, as do travelers at an inn. This is really interesting. I was recently reading to some clients a bit out of the Exeter book called The Wanderer,
Hmm.
and it echoes this sentiment. Right? It's an Anglo-Saxon work from like 1000 A.D., and it's very very similar to what Epictetus says here, in that everything is on loan, everything is merely lent.
The lifestyle too is so different. So many people today value, I guess, life. They value the time they have, where during that time period, I mean, what life expectancy and
Life
whatnot.
expectancy is low. This is why. This is why when a when a Roman general held a triumph, arguably one of the greatest moments of his life,
Hmm.
and there would be this massive parade and enormous expenditure, and everybody would be lavishing praise on him and throwing flowers at his feet and everything else.
Hmm.
A slave or a servant would be paid to walk behind him and say over and over again, "Memento mori,"
Hmm.
remember death. Do not forget that you are mortal. Do not forget that this is fleeting.
We have lost that.
Yep.
We really have. People no longer value the time they have because they think they have so much.
Yep. That said, I have little time left today, but I have enjoyed it spent. So
Indeed.
we have no gavel. We cannot adjourn the meeting.
I have a Altoids container. I could hit against a piece of wood.
There we go. Meeting adjourned.
Okay. Well, we'll
All
see
right, I've closed
everyone.
it out. I went ahead. Oh no, I
That's
no,
fine.
I didn't. I have
No,
not
you did
closed
it.
it out. Nope.
Haha. Well, then I get to do it again.
Yep.
We'll see everyone next time for another session of the Chabinet meeting.